When a country is rebuilding after decades of conflict, some of the toughest challenges are the ones you can't really see. And one of the biggest invisible challenges, making sure the medicine people rely on every single day is actually safe and effective. So today, we're going to dive deep inside Iraq's really complex pharmaceutical system to understand how it's supposed to work and where it's falling short. And this, right here, is exactly why this matters. Get this. A 2019 report from Iraq's own Ministry of Health dropped an absolute bombshell. A staggering 60 to 70% of medications in the private sector were neither registered nor quality tested. I mean, that's not just a number, is it? It means for millions of people, the medicine they buy could be ineffective or, even worse, dangerous. This is the core problem we really need to unpack.
So this just raises two massive questions. First, how on earth can a system that's meant to protect people become so incredibly vulnerable? And second, what's the actual plan to fix it? We're going to explore the official blueprint and then see how that stacks up against the reality on the ground.
Okay, so to understand what's going wrong, we've got to first look at how the system is supposed to work. And on paper, Iraq has a really detailed regulatory blueprint that's designed to do one thing: protect its citizens. The main player in all of this is the Directorate of Technical Affairs. Think of them as the primary gatekeeper for all medicine. They're part of the Ministry of Health, and their job is to regulate absolutely everything, from advanced vaccines to herbal supplements. They're the first and most important line of defense. And their responsibilities cover the entire life cycle of a medicine. Right from the very beginning, they decide if a drug can even enter the country. They're the ones who license the companies that make or import it, they run the lab tests to guarantee its quality, and they control the release of every single batch. And it doesn't stop there. Even after a drug hits the pharmacy shelves, they're responsible for watching for any harmful side effects. It's meant to be a completely seamless top-to-bottom oversight. So let's say you're a company with a new drug. What does that whole journey actually look like? Let's walk through the ideal path, from the lab all the way to a local pharmacy. So the official process has 4 main checkpoints. It all starts with selection, where a committee decides if a medicine is critical enough to be on the nation's essential medicines list. Next up is registration, where both the company and the product itself get thoroughly vetted. Then comes the really crucial quality control step, where samples are tested in a lab to make sure the drug is exactly what it claims to be. And only after passing all those checks can it finally move to distribution and get to patients. The system even has this pretty unique way of handling prices. It's not random at all. For generic drugs, the price ceiling is based on where the manufacturer is from. So, as you can see, a generic from Europe can be priced much higher than the exact same drug from a company in Asia. It's a fascinating strategy for cost control, all based on geography. So that's the blueprint. It looks great, right? A clear process, defined roles, even a strategy for pricing. But this is where the story takes a sharp turn. This is where that carefully designed plan runs headfirst into the real world, and where we start to see the cracks in the system. And here is the first major crack. Remember Key-Medea, that state agency in charge of buying essential medicines? Well, back in 2019, they were only able to get about 60% of what was needed. That 40% gap isn't just a statistic. It means public hospitals and clinics are literally running out of critical life-saving drugs. So why the massive gap? Well, a huge piece of the puzzle is funding. Iraq spends just 4.5% of its GDP on healthcare, which is pretty low for the region. When the national budget is stretched that thin, the money for essential medicines is often one of the first things to get squeezed. And that creates shortages that directly impact patients. Now, this slide reveals another major strain on the system. At first glance, you see that local Iraqi factories produce almost half the volume of all medicines, which sounds great. But then you look at the value of those medicines, and that share just plummets to about 15%. This tells a story of a domestic industry that's pumping out a lot of low-cost generics, but struggling to compete on value, which puts even more pressure on expensive imports to fill the gaps. And beyond the money in manufacturing, there's a crippling operational flaw. The entire regulatory system, from applications to approvals, is basically stuck in the past. It all runs on paper. Just imagine mountains of documents and having to physically show up for follow-ups for everything. This isn't just inefficient, it creates massive bottlenecks that can grind the entire process to a halt. So, we've seen the ideal blueprint and the real world cracks that threaten to shatter it. The big question is, how do you fix this? Fortunately, experts have looked at these problems closely and have laid out a clear 5-point plan for recovery. And here's that roadmap. Each step targets a specific crack in the system that we just talked about. To fix the bottlenecks, you ditch the paper and go digital. To close that 40% gap, you increase the public budget. To fight the flood of unregulated drugs, you create a national trace and track system. To ease the reliance on imports, you support the local drug industry. And to reduce all the confusion, you standardize the procedures. It's a direct, actionable plan for reform. The challenges are immense, no doubt, born from decades of instability. But the path forward is also clear. The blueprint for a safe and effective pharmaceutical system exists, and so does the roadmap for reform. The crucial question that remains is whether these steps can actually be taken, securing a healthier, safer future for millions.